Ron has asked me to set up the canvas for him to paint on this afternoon. So, a quick anecdote. My wife is the director of an alternative education program in the community of Benton Harbor where Ron does ministry, and they're co-laborers in that community, although they don't necessarily work directly. And a couple years ago, she came home from work. It was the middle of winter, and it had been a particularly difficult couple of months for her at work. She had just recently had a conversation with one of her students who came up to her crying, and she said, "Miss Knapp, I'm pregnant." And the student was 21 years old and was pregnant with her 5th child. And she goes, "I just don't know what to do." And a couple months before that, Allie had attended the funeral of one of her students who had frozen to death because he fell asleep in the yard. And it was the middle of winter. This is the community that she is actively trying to engage and trying to get opportunities. So she comes home from work after this day where she has this conversation with this pregnant 21-year-old mom of now 5 kids. And she goes, "You know, it's okay to build a society." I'm paraphrasing because she's a little bit more colorful than this, but she said it's okay to build a society in which we determine one's success by their ability to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. She says, but only if in that society everybody has boots. And the reality is I was born with boots on. Not only was I born with boots on, I was born with a closet full of boots. And not only was I born with a closet full of boots, those boots were laced up and they were shined and they were polished and they were waterproof. And not only did I have all that, but I had I was born with a $50 bill in my pocket. Just in case I didn't have boots on that day, I could go buy myself a pair of boots. That's the world I was born into. And the reality is that's not the case for everybody. And so what Ron is doing in Benton Harbor, what my wife is doing in Benton Harbor, is they are trying to bring boots to people who don't have them. And so everything Ron does, I believe, and that's what I see from my perspective, comes from that place. And he has 3 stages of education in mind as he's going about doing this. The first one is survival. Everything he's doing is around these 3 educational things. The first one, survival. Not in the way you think about it. Yes, food, shelter, those things. But survival education would be math, reading, and writing. And so he wants to give kids opportunities to learn survival education skills. The third one is inspirational educational opportunities. What inspires you? And you can't move into inspirational education unless you learn survival education. And the third one is service-oriented education opportunities. What can you give away? What inspires you that you can then give away? And so all of this is an attempt to give kids boots and to build an against the odds mentality. The odds are stacked against you, but can you have an against the odds mentality? And all of that he does undergirded by the gospel and the mission of New Life. So I'll let him talk from here, but he wanted to just lay the foundation for you.
Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that. And it's been because it's been a day where when Chris was saying that it's hard just talking to your contemporaries. No, it's hard talking after your contemporaries have talked. And they have said everything that needed to be said. I mean, in more than one time, Andrew looked at me and said, "Ron, ain't that what you're talking about?" I said, "Yeah, but here's the thing is that I want to take us back to earlier when we were affirming each other during the lunch thing, and we were going through that. What are the odds that you will be sitting here today? What are the odds? It don't matter what skin color you are. It don't matter. Just as a human being, what are the odds that you'll be sitting here in your right mind, and me in my right mind hearing what we're hearing today? And that's where I believe Jesus will give us words. He gave us some words like Adam, which is against the odds mentality, and then all the things that surround. He just, and that's actually in I think it's Luke chapter 21:15, where the disciples were like all confused, just wondering how are we going to, and Jesus actually began to predict to them what they were going to encounter, that they would be persecuted, they would be hurt. And so I'm not gonna, part of what I want to do real quick is I want to run through a little just general thing of how we got to this place where we are doing what we're doing in Benton Harbor. But before I do that, I think it's just as important to talk about in our own reality right here, everything we just heard today. What is going to be the obstacles that's going to cause those things not to happen? There's going to be adversaries. Already, there will be people that we have to have hard conversations with, not just those that we're trying to reach, but those in our committee, those on our teams. And I believe, just like Jesus, and Jesus' thing to them, he said, when you get before courts and you get before them, don't worry about what you're going to say. He said, I will give you words. And so a lot of where we have been and what has happened, so I want to backtrack because some of y'all don't know, I was around when Chris Tooley beat out all of other people to become regional director. No, that's a real thing. And I was filled up today just seeing Jay. And knowing that what God has been doing, he has given a lot of people a lot of words. So the real short version, because I know we don't have a lot of time, people blather about the verse, everybody wants to go home. This is what I want to say real quick is, I didn't just last night come up with, let's do this thing called against the odds mentality, impact the community. It was a whole process God was setting in motion. And this is about 2004. 2000, when I created a not-for-profit. Well, long story short, how I interacted with Young Life, my first interaction with Young Life was in South Bend, where Jan Marable, some of y'all may know who Jan Marable, she had just got hired in South Bend. I didn't know who she was. She was looking for a place to do Young Life. Without me, now I can reflect and see what she did was apply against the odds mentality, because she went around searching, trying to find somewhere to do club, and people were wanting to charge her. So I said, Jan, I'm facilitating a block grant for a community center. You come, and all you got to do is just show up. She never asked me to be a leader. She partnered. That's why when I was listening to Maddie and what was going on, I'm going, drop the mic. He just talked about what atomic is. No, it's a big surprise. He was the first one that sent me an email after we talked about atomic last time, said, Ron, I'm in. Because we live in it, but we may not be, there may be strategy. And all I did since that point was walk a journey, both in Young Life and then 7 years after Young Life, where even the first 3 years after Young Life, we paid for kids to go to camp against the odds with our own money. That's how much we believed that God wanted to use us as tools. And as I was sitting back today, I want to leave you with some quotes, some quick things, because what has happened with the comic, we've probably developed in partnerships, creating partnerships. If you take the story go back and watch the video, first of all of this. I can't add to this. Go back and watch it, because we probably developed 40, 50, 60 partnerships like that. It's led to multiple leaders. I couldn't, even though I moved my ministry to Benton Harbor from that South Bend start, we have systems in motion in South Bend. I could never turn them off because of what Maddie's talking about right here. Are y'all hearing that? And this has happened in a period of time that I never could have did it by myself. Kyle and Josh, the stuff they're saying. But here's the thing. You have adversaries, and the biggest one that you have is focus, prioritization, and systemizing how to realize you cannot be the whole hospital. There's only two trains of thoughts in youth work. One is my entity. I don't care what you call it. I have a not-for-profit called Archangel. My entity, and consider the people you want to serve, the patients. There are only two train of thoughts. My hospital, I am the hospital, I can serve every emergency room patient that comes in. That was my train of thought for a while. Then God broke me. He broke me and he showed me that train of thought is not my biblical train of thought. That we are many members of one body. And Ron, you and Young Life and every piece is just a part of the hospital. So if you work in collaboration with the other EMTs that bring the people in, and you will realize what it is that you cannot do, I'll do great things. I mean, I'm sitting here on the verge of tears when she was talking about, where's my beautiful baby that was talking about Capernaum? Is she still here?
Yes, I believe.
Yeah, when she was talking about that. Now, leaders see connection. That's the first thing I want you to get. Christian leaders especially should seek connections. I'm immediately thinking of how we put together strategies for young people to serve in Capernaum, but you gotta first have all the things to meet their needs to get them leadership developed, which Kyle is talking, and all these different pieces. So all we did with Atomic was over a period of time try to create an acronym where nobody had any one identity. Anybody can own it. You can become an Atomic community. And Atomic stands for Against the Odds Mentality Impact Community. Where's Kyle at? Where's he at? He's still here? Yeah. He had to go. You realize one of the last... Yeah, one of the last things he said, I want to impact community. God is speaking. He spoke today through so many different things. I'm hardly left with anything to say. Really. Please go watch the video because your number one enemy is going to be your focus and your willingness to figure out what are my immediate next steps in what I call the birthing suite. I see Young Life in the hospital as part of the birthing suite. You got to decide based on your area, and that's all we've done. That's what Paul was just talking about. We have figured out there are certain things to birth the babies that we want to birth for Christ into life in our community. There are certain things we have to be equipped to do, and then we have to partner in the right way to take that baby to full delivery. And it will not be easy. It's simple, but it is not easy. So in the period of time, what we did was systematically also begin to realize that everything is hard if you don't use the tools. When I was listening to my beautiful person talk about Young Lives, I'm going, that's the expert for Young Lives. That means I don't have to be it. Well, in your community, there's an expert in something for young people, or even there are teachers that are experts that would love to be in your ministry, but we're not speaking the right language. We're talking discipleship, and they're thinking mentors. So we need to change our language. They're thinking school. We're thinking church, but they're the same thing. We're thinking lay people. They're thinking students, same thing. And so what God just set me on a course to do, through the years of work and all the different pieces, Ron, relearn the language of those who also co-share in heart a care and a love for bleeding kids in the community. And I don't mean physical blood, I mean emotional blood. We heard it today. It's bleeding out. Can you see it? Can you see the emotional blood? And if you can't, that's the starting point. So here's my challenge to you. Here's my challenge to you. For the patience that God has, the patience, not patience, but the patience in the hospital that God's called you to in your community. Who in your community